sea's rhythm is steady, endless, wearing down the cliffs of the Jurassic Coast little by little. But hidden within those cliffs are stories of worlds long gone, of creatures that lived and died millions of years ago. Fossils lie in the rocks, ancient remnants of life that once thrived in environments vastly different from what we see today. This coastline, stretching over 150 kilometers, is a unique window into three of the most important periods in Earth's history: the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. Each fossil, embedded in the rock, tells part of the story of how life evolved, flourished, and sometimes disappeared. But to truly understand these fossils, we must look at the rocks that they are found in, the geological layers that have preserved them for millions of years. The Jurassic Coast is a treasure trove of geology, offering a near-continuous, uninterrupted sequence of rocks that spans the Mesozoic era, a monumental chunk of Earth's past, from 251 to 66 million years ago. These cliffs have stood witness to ancient deserts, shallow seas, and massive extinctions. Now they stand as towering archives of Earth's dynamic history, all exposed by the relentless work of erosion. Today, we'll focus on just 3 remarkable sites along the Jurassic Coast, but this region boasts 67 locations that are nationally and internationally recognized through the Geological Conservation Review. Together, they solidified the Jurassic Coast status as a living record of Earth's geological history. And while you can find examples of similar geological time periods around the world, no place offers such a complete and uninterrupted journey through the Mesozoic era. Other famous geological World Heritage Sites, like Ischigualasto-Talampaya in Argentina and Canada's Dinosaur Provincial Park, highlight parts of the Triassic and late Cretaceous periods. However, none of them tells the full story of the Mesozoic like the Jurassic Coast does. What makes this area truly special is not just its completeness, but the depth of knowledge we have about it. This coastline represents one of the best documented sedimentary basins in the world, studied extensively over the years, while places like Australia's Sydney and Gippsland basins or the western flank of North America's Basin and Range Province offer similar geological features. None are as extensively protected or as deeply understood as this remarkable stretch of coast. For over 3 centuries, the Jurassic Coast has been a crucible for Earth science, shaping our understanding of geology and the forces that have shaped the planet. It was here that the foundations of modern geology were laid, as early geologists sought to unravel the mysteries of Earth's past. The importance of this coastline is not only in the rocks and fossils it holds, but in the minds it inspired and the groundbreaking discoveries made here. The story begins in 1673, when John Ray first noted the fossil wealth of Lyme Regis. His observation would later draw some of the most important figures in geology to this stretch of coast. In 1770, James Hutton, often called the father of modern geology, visited Weymouth, where his revolutionary ideas about deep time and the Earth's continuous cycles of creation and erosion began to take root. Hutton's theories would later form the bedrock of modern geology, and it was places like the Jurassic Coast that helped him see the Earth's processes in action. Among those inspired by this region was William Smith, who would go on to create the first geological map of England in the early 19th century. Smith's work was groundbreaking, as it allowed geologists to understand the layers of the Earth in a new way, revealing the history of the planet written in its rocks. It was also during this period that Sir Charles Lyell, a champion of uniformitarianism, the idea that the same natural processes observed today have always operated, visited the Jurassic Coast. His work would further solidify the idea of deep geological time and inspire Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. But perhaps no one captured the scientific imagination more than Mary Anning, a self-taught fossil hunter from Lyme Regis. In the early 1800s, Mary and her family made a series of astonishing discoveries that would change the course of paleontology. In 1811, at just 12 years old, Mary discovered the first complete ichthyosaur skeleton ever found, a discovery that caused a sensation in the scientific world. In 1823, she uncovered the first complete plesiosaur, and in 1828, the first British pterodactyl. These fossils, pulled from the cliffs by Mary's sharp eyes and dedication, became the basis for some of the most important scientific work of the time. Mary Anning's discoveries were not just remarkable for the creatures they revealed, but for how they challenged the prevailing beliefs about Earth's history. Her finds helped to prove that the Earth was far older than previously thought, and that entire species had gone extinct, leaving behind only their fossilized remains. Mary's fossils found their way into the collections of the greatest museums, including the Natural History Museum in London and the Cedric Museum in Cambridge, and her work continues to inspire geologists and paleontologists to this day. From the groundbreaking ideas of James Hutton and William Smith to the extraordinary fossil discoveries of Mary Anning, the cliffs and beaches of the Jurassic Coast has been a window into the deep past, a place where the Earth's secrets are revealed layer by layer, and the rocks and fossils that tell the story of our planet. Sidmouth opens one of the first chapters in this story, beginning with the Triassic period, which started around 251 million years ago. Here, exposed in the cliffs, is a virtually continuous sequence of 1,100 meters of sediments. These red-bedded rocks tell the tale of an ancient landscape, arid and continental at first, but gradually giving way to shallow marine environments. You can see the aftermath of the Veruscan orogeny, a mountain-building event that reshaped the Earth some 330 to 280 million years ago. This tectonic collision formed towering mountains across what is now southern England and northern Europe, but over millions of years, those peaks were worn down by the relentless forces of erosion. The once mighty Veruscan mountains were gradually reduced to sediments, which accumulated in basins as the landscape evolved. As these ancient mountains crumbled, the Earth was about to face an even more dramatic event, the Permian-Triassic extinction, some 252 million years ago. This was the most catastrophic mass extinction in Earth's history, wiping out 96% of marine species and 70% of life on land. The extinction was caused by a deadly combination of increasing global temperatures, the release of carbon from methane hydrates, widespread ocean stagnation and anoxia, and massive volcanic eruptions associated with the formation of the supercontinent Pangaea. The world was thrown into chaos. The ecosystems collapsed on a scale never before seen. In the aftermath of this extinction, as life struggled to recover, the region now known as the Jurassic Coast began to transform. By the late Triassic, the worn-down remnants of the Veruscan Mountains had settled into a vast basin. This area, once a part of the arid interior of Pangaea, began to see the rise of shallow seas and river systems. The Jurassic Basin that emerged would soon become the site of rich sediment deposits, preserving fossils from a recovering world. The continental red beds that were deposited during the Permian and Triassic periods, between roughly 300 and 200 million years ago, are beautifully exposed along the coast. During this time, the continents were joined as the supercontinent Pangaea, and what is now Devon sat deep within its hot and arid interior. Much like modern deserts, this environment supported limited flora and fauna, and the red beds of the Cretaceous period along the Jurassic Coast are largely barren of fossils. However, during the Middle Triassic, an extensive river system flowed northward from what is now northern France, carving its way through southern and central England before emptying into the East Irish Sea basin. These braided and meandering rivers provided vital water sources, and the sediments they deposited contained the remains of the organisms that once lived along their banks. In Devon, the rock sequence associated with this ancient river system is known as the Otter Sandstone. Though once recognised as a distinct formation, the Otter Sandstone has since been reclassified by the British Geological Survey as part of the Helsby Sandstone Formation, alongside other similarly aged sandstone formations across southern Britain. The Otter Sandstone, which reaches a thickness of around 210 metres inland, thins towards the coast. Near Sidmouth, the exposure of the Otter Sandstone Formation runs along about 10 kilometres of coastal cliffs and intertidal ledges, stretching from Budleigh Salterton to just east of Sidmouth. It is this rock formation that first strikes you as you arrive at Sidmouth shoreline. The deep red of the cliffs that tower above the shoreline are hard to miss. The vivid colour, almost glowing in the afternoon or early morning light, feels like a clue to the land's ancient past. Walking along the beaches beneath these cliffs, it's not difficult to see why this place feels so different from other parts of the Jurassic Coast. The fossils found here are few, but they are precious. Most commonly, paleontologists find fossilized bones and footprints of early reptiles. Fossils of Rhynchosaur, a small herbivorous reptile, are among the most commonly found vertebrates in the fossil record of the Otter Sandstone. These creatures had beak-like jaws and sharp teeth. suited to nibbling on the tough plants that managed to survive in this harsh desert-like landscape. Footprints of other Triassic reptiles, including Chirotherium, have been found preserved in the sandstone layers. These prints, often mistaken for dinosaur tracks, belong to ancient crocodile-like creatures that roamed the dry, cracked riverbanks. It's incredible to think that these footprints, fossilized in the mud of a prehistoric environment so different from today, are now exposed on the coastline of Devon. Sidmouth's red cliffs hold within them a record of resilience, a time when life was slowly recovering from extinction and the world was arid, vast, and almost unrecognizable compared to the lush environments of later periods. But the Earth was preparing for a change. As the Triassic period gave way to the Jurassic, the region continued to evolve, laying down the layers of rock and fossil evidence we see today. This slow but steady geological transformation was part of larger tectonic shifts as Pangaea began to fragment and the forces that would eventually open the Atlantic Ocean came into play. Lulworth Cove, with its perfectly circular bay, is a masterpiece of geology and time. Renowned for its breathtaking scenery, fascinating rock formations, and rich fossil deposits, Lulworth Cove is a place where the past is so clearly written in the very landscape. As you walk down to the cove, you step into a natural amphitheatre greeted by a view that captures millions of years of Earth's history in one glance. The cliffs here tell a story that stretches across 80 million years, from the Jurassic to the Cretaceous period. As you gaze up at the towering walls of rock, some reaching up to 150 meters, you're looking at a near continuous record of ancient environments and climates that once dominated this part of the world. The journey begins with the Jurassic limestones deposited over 140 million years ago in a warm, shallow sea. Back then, this area was a tropical marine paradise. Layers of fine-grained sediments settled on the seabed, slowly compressing over millions of years to form the hard limestone that now makes up much of the cliffs. This limestone, smooth and pale, is a reminder of an ancient sea floor, now pushed up and exposed by the forces of tectonic movement. The fossils of Lulworth Cove reveal a world teeming with marine life. Ammonites with their distinctive coiled shells are perhaps the most iconic fossils of the Jurassic Coast. These ancient cephalopods swam in the seas, their spiral shells serving both as protection and buoyancy aids. Here in Lulworth, you can still find their fossils, sometimes embedded in the limestone, sometimes loose among the rocks on the beach. Some ammonite fossils are enormous, measuring up to 1 meter across, while others are no bigger than a coin. But they all tell the story of the rich biodiversity of the Jurassic seas. Alongside ammonites, the Lulworth Cove area also yields fossils of ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. These marine reptiles dominated the oceans, with ichthyosaurs resembling modern dolphins and plesiosaurs characterized by their long necks and flipper-like limbs. Fossilized bones and even complete skeletons have been found in the limestone and shale of this area, beautifully preserved after millions of years. Imagine these creatures gliding through the waters, hunting fish and cephalopods, long before the first humans ever walked the Earth. As time passed, the Earth's environment shifted, and by the Cretaceous period, this region was once again submerged beneath the sea, though the conditions were slightly different. The chalk ridge that runs from Durdle Door to Ballard Down tells the story of this new age. Formed from the microscopic skeletons of plankton that drifted in these ancient seas, the chalk is a vivid marker of the long-gone marine life that flourished here. Layer upon layer of these tiny skeletons settled to the bottom of the sea, eventually forming the vast chalk cliffs we see today. These chalk ridges are some of the most resilient features of the landscape, standing tall against the wear of time and tides. But the story of Lulworth Cove isn't just about how the rock is layered, it's about how the forces of nature have shaped the layers. The chalk and the limestone ridges create a spine that runs eastward, but softer rocks have not withstood the same pressures. To the north of the ridge, the softer sands and clays of the Tertiary period tell of a very different environment, an era dominated by rivers, swamps, and dense forests. Up until medieval times, this low ground was a landscape of bogs and wetlands, separating what we now call the Isle of Purbeck from the mainland. Over millions of years, the rivers that once flowed through this region carried sediment, forming the soft layers of clay and sand that now lie beneath the more resilient limestone. South of the chalk ridge, the story takes another twist. Here, The hard Portland stone limestone forms a second ridge, a relic of an ancient, shallow marine environment. But even this tough layer couldn't hold out against the relentless forces of erosion. The sea breached this ridge, carving into the softer Purbeck, Wealden, and greensand sediments that lay behind it. Over time, the sea slowly ate away at these softer rocks, forming the sweeping bays we know today: Lulworth Cove, St. Oswald's Bay, Moot Bay, and Warbarrow Bay. The rocks of the Purbeck beds, made up of alternating layers of hard limestone and soft mudstone, are particularly telling of the environments they were formed in. These beds read as chapters that shifted between freshwater lagoons, coastal swamps, and shallow seas. The limestones represent times when the sea encroached, leaving behind layers of sediment rich with marine fossils, while the mudstones tell of quieter, more stagnant waters, swamps where decaying plant matter accumulated. These layers have responded differently to the immense tectonic pressures that folded and shaped the landscape. The limestone fractured but remains as solid, continuous layers, while the softer mudstone sheared and flowed, filling the spaces between the harder rocks. One of the most dramatic displays of this geological dance can be seen at Stair Hole. On the eastern side, the thick Portland stone limestone acts like a protective shield, sheltering the softer mudstones from the full force of the sea. But on the western side, the sea has breached the limestone, creating a small hole that has allowed it to slowly carve its way into the softer Purbeck beds and Wealden layers behind. It's a process that continues to this day, gradually reshaping the landscape as the sea slowly works its way through the softer rock. As you climb the cliffs and look out over the bay, it's hard not to imagine the Jurassic Sea that once covered this landscape. Beneath your feet, the rocks of the Purbeck beds hold fossils not just of marine life, but of the first dinosaurs to walk this coastline. At nearby locations, fossilized dinosaur footprints reveal where theropods hunted along the shore. These bipedal carnivorous dinosaurs left their mark in more ways than one, preserving a moment in time that we can still touch today. Lulworth Cove is a place where time seems to stand still, yet every rock face and formation reveals the slow, steady work of nature. It's a landscape that continues to evolve, as the forces that shaped it millions of years ago are still at work today, eroding, folding, and shaping the land. And while the sea may eventually reclaim its parts of this coastline, for now, it stands as one of the most dramatic and beautiful records of Earth's ancient history. Moving further down the peninsula, the Isle of Purbeck is home to some of the most dramatic and well-preserved coastal landforms along the Jurassic Coast. It stands as a perfect example of how the interaction between the sea and the geology of the region shapes the landscape, offering one of the best-known displays of both concordant and discordant coasts. Here, the sea works either with or against the natural grain of the coastline, carving out distinct features that reveal the power of coastal erosion over time. One of the most iconic sites along this coastline is Old Harry Rocks, a series of striking chalk formations at Foreland Point. These towering sea stacks showcase each stage in the life cycle of coastal erosion. Starting with caves cut into the cliffs by the relentless action of waves, these formations evolve into arches, and eventually the arches collapse, leaving behind isolated sea stacks like Old Harry himself. Over time, even these sea stacks will succumb to the sea, just as previous formations have done before them. The chalk itself, formed from the microscopic skeletons of plankton that lived in the warm Cretaceous seas over 100 million years ago, is relatively soft compared to the harder limestone layers further along the coast. This makes it particularly vulnerable to erosion, allowing the dramatic sea stacks to develop. Old Harry Rocks also offers a glimpse into a much deeper story. The end of the World Heritage Site is marked just south of Studland Bay by a deep erosion surface in the chalk. This point tells of the Great Cretaceous Tertiary extinction event that occurred 65 million years ago, which wiped out the dinosaurs. The evidence of this mass extinction, so pivotal in Earth's history, has been erased from geological record here by the forces of erosion, leaving a gap where the boundary would otherwise be. The chalk cliffs at Old Harry Rocks, along with the surrounding bays and ridges, are a testament to the power of erosion and the slow, steady processes that have shaped the coastline over millions of years. Looking at the geology along the length of the Jurassic Coast, It's hard not to be captivated by the sheer scale and significance of what lies beneath our feet. This coastline is a remarkable geological wonder, home to an almost complete representation of the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. Millions of years of Earth history captured in stone. What makes it even more extraordinary is that all of this is contained within a single sedimentary basin, a natural archive that tells the story of life on Earth over 185 million years. As we journeyed from west to east along the coast, we are effectively walking through time, encountering progressively younger layers. It's as if the landscape has been laid out for us to read, with each rock stratum telling the tale of a different environment, whether it was a desert, a shallow sea, or a river plain. These rock layers don't just preserve the geological structure of the land, they also provide a window into the life that once thrived here. The fossils found within these cliffs, whether they're marine creatures from the Jurassic seas or ancient plants from the Cretaceous forests, are interwoven elements of the prehistoric record. Together, they paint a vivid picture of how life and environments evolved over time. Shaped by the natural processes largely untouched by human interference, the Jurassic Coast cliffs, beaches, and landforms are constantly evolving, sculpted by the forces of erosion and the movement of the Earth. And this erosion, though destructive, plays a vital role in revealing new layers of rock and exposing fresh fossils for us to study. The boundary of the Jurassic Coast is defined by nature itself. On one side, it stretches out to the mean low water mark, where the waves continually lap against the shore. On the other, it's limited by the cliff tops, or the back of the beach. This natural delineation works in harmony with the protected status of the area, ensuring that the Jurassic Coast remains a preserved window into the past. But this is a living, breathing landscape, and the high rate of erosion means that it's constantly changing. The cliffs crumble, the shoreline shifts, and the coastline continues to reshape itself. This ever-changing environment requires careful monitoring to ensure that the boundaries of this remarkable site evolve along with it, preserving its integrity as one of the world's most important geological records. As we've discovered, the Jurassic Coast is more than just a landscape. It is a journey through Earth's deep past, a record of life's triumphs and tragedies written in stone. This episode was produced, recorded, and edited on Anaiwan land, and we acknowledge that this land was never ceded. We recognise and respect the ongoing culture and community of the Anaiwan people and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, including elders past, present, and emerging. Music used in this episode includes On the Shore by Kevin MacLeod, retrieved from incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license.